You are listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
To the chasers of light, to the purveyors of pictures, to all of you listening and watching from around the world, this is the F11 Photography Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Deal, along with your other host, Mr. Brandon Gorrie.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the F11 Photography Podcast. This is our second episode on air, live on YouTube. Not live, but recorded.
And you may notice that if you watched episode 1, we are wearing the same clothes that we were wearing before, and it's not because we're homeless and we're poor. It's because we record these things in clusters. So it's pretty obvious to those of you who are watching when we do clusters because we're wearing the same clothes. It would be kind of weird if we changed.
No, it wouldn't. I think we should start doing that.
You think we should just start changing?
Yeah, 'cause I didn't even think about that because when we used to record on.
Hey.
Okay, I'm like, oh, okay, we're about to be demonetized.
So now look at me. I'm not poor.
Hold up.
Hold on. Now we're not poor. There we go. Now I'm a little cold. I don't know why.
There we go.
All right.
Wait. You're telling me you wear two shirts?
When I wear a soccer jersey, yes.
Oh, do you get like gnarly BO when you wear just the soccer jersey? Because I do.
I don't know because I wear two shirts. Great question that I don't know the answer to.
Yeah, so we didn't record 3 episodes in the same day. This is a new episode. We recorded a different day, and I'm a different person. Hold on, let me see.
Yeah. We're gonna hypnotize everybody, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Hold on. There we go.
We are back to you live. We are going to explore the latest in ambient jungle in Bristol.
I don't know what you mean by that. But anyway,
I look like a DJ from the 90s is what I'm trying to say, Kevin.
Fair enough. Yeah. If you are listening on Apple, Spotify, or whatever, welcome. If you could support us by also subscribing to this channel on YouTube, that would be great. Our eventual goal is to monetize here. So
yeah,
it would be nice to make a little bit of money when you guys watch or listen to this pod. It'd be pretty cool, actually.
Make a couple burner accounts.
Yeah.
Get
exactly.
your friends and family to watch our episodes. We don't censor anything, so it's very inviting. Very inviting.
So I have a YouTube channel, and I have to be kind of straight and narrow on that because it's more about tips, techniques, tutorials, and gear reviews and all that. And here I feel like I can be a little more laid back and unveil a side of myself that I don't get to unveil on my YouTube channels. Channel singular.
Yeah.
And you kind of are you're kind of the same way. You're a little more straight and narrow. He has a YouTube channel as well.
Very inactive on it, but
yes. So I feel like I can be a lot more uncensored on.
You know, it's funny. I feel a little bit more reserved on this podcast than I do elsewhere for some reason. I'm kind of the opposite.
Yeah, well, whatever. We have two different personalities. So
yeah.
I drop the F-bombs on here. I don't drop the F-bombs on my gear review channel. So I'm on Kevin Deal Photography, which I'll leave a link in the description below. Subscribe there too if you like both.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
subscribe
absolutely.
to Brandon.
So subscribe to me. It's Brandon Gorrie, and I talk a lot about film tips, and I review film cameras. Very affordable, very approachable film cameras.
Yes. And this is our second episode on YouTube, and it's great to be on both YouTube and in the podcast world because maybe you start watching this on your phone or you start watching it on your laptop and then you get called into work or whatever and you got to go do your commute. You can just download this same episode on whatever you listen to, Spotify, Apple, and then you can go, I was about 30 minutes in. I'll start about 30 minutes in, and you can continue the episode on a different platform. So
yes, or if you have YouTube Premium, you're obviously going to be able to turn your phone off and continue in your Apple AirPods or wherever you are.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good to be on both. As we said in our first episode, we did want to do more visual stuff, and we're going to do that here. And we're going to try to be descriptive when we show things because we don't want to alienate the listener. We don't want them to go, we don't know what's going on, Kevin. So We're going to do our best. Give us a little grace. We're going to get better at that.
I mean, you may not want to alienate the listener. I say join the YouTube crowd, like
I mean, hey, sometimes people got to go to work, So
sometimes they do.
yeah. So, but anyway, so today's episode, we are going to be talking about cinema because Brandon and I, when we first met, we had we had a shared love for cinema. It's probably what made us pick up our cameras in the first place. And so in today's episode, we're going to talk about the things that made us want to pick up a camera, the movies that made us want to pick up a camera, and movies that have come out since we've picked up a camera that make us continue to want to keep shooting. Because I know a lot of you who are watching this or listening to this are like us, and you saw a movie that floored you, and you're like, "My gosh, I need to get a camera." And I'm more of a stills photographer than a videographer, but cinema still influences my stills. So I would say
that was great. I like that. Yeah, by all means. It's actually interesting is when Kevin and I formulated this episode, we obviously went and did our research. We went and kind of refreshed the movies that we like, scenes that we like. And it was interesting because I found that a lot of the movies that I enjoyed and that have influenced me, a lot of the framing in and of themselves in different scenes, characters' inflections, the acting, and the composition is you could take stills from these movies, and I wouldn't be surprised if I saw these stills on the walls of MoMA, taken on Portrait 400 or the respective Kodachrome in the 60s and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. I also had to weed out some films as well because some films inspire me to go shoot, but there's not really any frames you can pull from the movie itself where it's like, oh, that's a great shot. It's kind of more of a compelling narrative. I find the narrative more interesting than I do the composition, and so it's inspiration in that way, which is interesting.
Well, I think today's episode is a perfect example of why we're on YouTube now, because you can enjoy this episode if you're listening in your car or, in your AirPods or whatever, but you can take it to that next level, that next dimension, because we're going to be able to show you things. I'm not going to have video examples of every episode. I'm going to just talk about how certain episodes help me and influence me. I'm not going to have examples for everything. But it's going to be a great hybrid. It's going to be a great test. And this is not an episode we could have done in season 1, which, by the way, we are in season 2, episode 2 now. And so let's listen to a word from our sponsor. Harness the power of artificial intelligence with Luminar Neo. Artificial intelligence is the buzzword in the photography industry right now. It's becoming so widely used in our industry, it's hard to tell when it's hype and when it's actually an effective tool. Luminar Neo actually uses AI for good by giving you easy-to-use modules that are powerful and improve your photography. And now they're happy to announce the introduction of Generace, which is their generative AI fill. What is Generace? It's a smart personal assistant that will help you remove unwanted distractions from your image. Unlike a standard erase tool, it leverages the power of AI to fill the gaps with textures and other elements to match the surrounding area. You'll easily get realistic results because Generace is analyzing your photographs to make sure that the results look realistic, mimicking patterns and objects that it sees. In addition to other powerful modules like relight, power line removal, and AI masking, Luminar Neo is on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, but it's not just a plugin for Photoshop. You can actually use it as a standalone program with a catalog organizer and all that. It also has presets. Use the code KEVIN10 at checkout or check out the link in this podcast to get 10% off your copy of Luminar Neo today.
This is Jason Berkman, and you're listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
I love his voice.
His voice is awesome. Welcome back. We are doing the episode today on cinema. So I want to talk about what is, in my opinion, required, and that's Lawrence of Arabia.
Absolutely.
If you are a film student and you want to study cinematography, this is the movie. Like, I am an environmental portrait photographer, and when you look at these shots, everything, the golden rule, the rule of thirds, the composition, I'm sure they have Fibonacci sequence in here. They have everything in here, but if you're an environmental portrait photographer and you're listening or watching this podcast and you want to be inspired, I highly recommend you go check out Lawrence of Arabia. It was made in I think 1962. It is probably and arguably the greatest piece of cinematography of all time, as far as the meticulous planning for all these shots. The fact that they just everything is the scale, the sense of scale. One of the things that I love to do as an environmental portrait photographer, yes, I like to take headshots. Yes, I like to take 3/4 body shots and all that. But something that I do in my work is that I like to do scale shots. I like to show somebody as super tiny in a very large open space. I love negative space, whether that space is filled or it's just a white backdrop. But this movie right here, Lawrence of Arabia, is required, man. It's awesome. When you go see Star Wars and you see that shot of Luke Skywalker and he's got the binoculars and you see the two suns and you have that beautiful sunset, this was all inspired by Lawrence of Arabia. The cinematography on this is absolutely, in my opinion, for a spoken word film, in at least American cinema, is the greatest film of all time. For cinematography, especially considering the fact that this movie is now 61 years old. I mean, it's old, and it's just a classic, man. You really can't go wrong with it, and it just, the soundtrack too is amazing.
Something I find interesting about movies in that era is in the 60s and the 50s, when color was coming out, it wasn't, of course you had the guys in Hollywood and they're just like, oh, we need to make, we want this return. We're going to make this movie. We want this to be the best movie because we want fucking crazy returns. But as an art form, cinema is an art form that combined painting with theater. It was a move away from theater. And so in the 20s and 30s, there was kind of a clash, and people viewed cinema as not only like a narrative, not only like a money generating thing, but also as an art form. And so they explored it as an art form. They took compositional theory from paintings. They took compositional theory from the old masters of the 19th, 17th, 16th century. And so, of course, in the 60s, when we had an explosion of fantastic cinema from Russia, from the US, obviously, you had the French New Wave, you had the Czech New Wave, you had all this stuff. We got some incredible films. And so, saying that, I want to talk about one of my next favorite films that has inspired a lot of my cinematography itself, and that is Stalker by Andrei Tarkovsky. Now, something I like about this film is there's no wasted space. Every frame is well balanced, and there's an intent behind all of it. The lighting is incredible. And Tarkovsky himself is a very rigid and very technically adept director. His static shots as well as his dynamic shots are incredibly moving. And like I said earlier, with no wasted space, it's very inspiring because it's taught me how to utilize space really well. It's inspired me to pick up the camera and go wider. As you can see here, as he's zooming out, there's no real waste of space, and his framing is absolutely immaculate. His lighting is absolutely immaculate. His subject to environment juxtaposition is incredible. Like right here, kind of giving that sci-fi nuance. I believe this was like an old grain factory that they found in the middle of Russia, and they just went with it. So Tarkovsky is often regarded as the best cinematographer to come out of Russia. Is in the way he uses space and symmetry is very similar to Kubrick, and personally, I just find it incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, I the work on that is incredible. I also want to keep it on the older tip here, which is Citizen Kane. You check out this shot right here. What's unique about this shot, and I'm going to using it as a freeze frame. As photographers, we're taught you use depth of field to isolate, right? Well, in this shot right here, they're not using depth of field to isolate. This is a deep depth of field. So they're not shooting at like T, because it's T stops in cinema. They're not shooting at like T 2.8 or something like that. This is probably like T 16 or something like that. It is everything that you need to see is in focus. You have the parents giving their child away. You have the guy taking the child, and then you have the child innocently playing outside with absolutely no idea that they're about to be given away.
And what I love about that shot is there's that degree of separation, not only like the way this is composed is you're looking through a window into the child's life. You're not seeing it from the child's perspective. You're seeing it from the adult perspective. Everyone's in that same room. It's that same zone. And the child's life is a very small, insignificant window. And that's kind of like the premise of the cinematic and the narrative relationship to the child.
Yeah, another thing that's cool about Citizen Kane is the depth of the not just the depth of field, but the what's the word I'm looking for? The dynamic range. There's very little dynamic range in this movie, and as photographers, we freak out about things like dynamic range. There's some scenes in there that only have 5-6 stops of dynamic range in them. We freak out over cameras that have like 12 to 14 stops of dynamic range, and it's regarded as one of the greatest movies of all time. And so I think that that's something to be learned from that. It's more about your idea that matters, and you don't need things to be at f1.2 or t1 point whatever in the cinema world to isolate things. Another thing that Citizen Kane did is everybody borrowed from it. Raiders of the Lost borrowed from it, and the movie we're about to talk about next also borrowed from it in some of the scenes, and that's something that Brandon is going to talk about.
So one of my favorite movies that basically inspires world building, it inspires color grading, and it kind of like inspires like intricate lighting is Blade Runner here, as you can see. When I go to shoot a photo series, and when I go to look at how I want to light something, or how I want to create a sort of noir with harsher light, and even shooting direct light, I look at Blade Runner here. They often change between tight shots, wide shots, and medium shots, and they create a sense of what the world is. See, like here, there's a whole shot dedicated to this machine, which we don't know exactly what it is, but there's an organic, element to that machine showing the eye. A lot of what I like about Blade Runner is the juxtaposition of the synthetic with the organic, and how that blends so well. It is the infusion of technology with the organic matter, and it's a subject matter that I like to explore in my own work. And there's too much to say about Blade Runner, because the way it's shot, there's a lot of technical aspects.
We could do a whole episode.
Yeah, we really could. But I kind of just wanted to focus on the world building and the juxtaposition of technology with organic human. I'm losing it. Humanism.
Well, that particular movie to me, the rain, the smoke, the color temperatures it was shot at, the teal and orange, of course, shots through Venetian blinds. Shadows are more blue than black. The color grading on it is insane. And they carried it over, by the way, into 2049. I think that 2049 took that to a whole new level. But I guess there's two things that I want to take away from Blade Runner. A common theme that I do in both color and in black and white. And in color, just in general, with lenses. Obviously, with color, I love the way that I like to go into shadows sometimes, and I like to make them appear more blue. That's definitely something that I took from Blade Runner. I love shooting through shadow. I love through smoke. I love juxtaposition. All of that is stuff that Blade Runner taught me. I love using anamorphic lenses. We're going to get more into anamorphic lenses later in this episode, because to me, one thing that I noticed when I started going through all my favorite movies was that they almost all, at least all the ones from the 1970s onward, use anamorphic lenses. Now, back then they didn't have a word for it, because the word anamorphic didn't come around until they started converting things over to DVDs and all that. It was just the format it was shot in. But another word that absolutely works for me is noir. And if you look at some of my black and white work, it is noir. And I want to talk about one of my favorite movies of all time that was shot in noir, and that is Austin's own Robert Rodriguez, Sin City. I absolutely love the way that this film was shot. The black and white, and then they would do selective color in it. I don't use selective color. I don't take that from it. But gosh, Mickey Rourke, like, dude, like that hardness, that sharpness, that contrast just is insane in this movie. And to this day, I use this. Might have to blur that out. Might have to blur that out. But to this day, this movie is an absolute masterpiece in cinematography. I love those low shots. Just everything is so crisp in this movie. And so, this is my favorite film. And we're going to have to blur out the tits.
I've never seen this movie. I'm really enjoying this.
You've never seen Sin City?
No, the composition's incredible.
Holy shit, this movie is...
It looks... I don't like Robert Rodriguez for a number of reasons because he's super cheesy, but...
Dude, this movie is insane. You got to see it.
Wild. It almost looks like Zack Snyder's work, like Watchmen and 300. It's got that stylized like specular highlights where there's like no need for them to be there.
It is one of the coolest movies, and I would say probably borrows from Blade Runner in the sense that there's lots of there's lots of snow, rain falling, tons of rain, just things getting in front of the shots. The blood is just insane in this movie. Look at that, dude. I mean, that just looks insane. So, but yes, Sin City. If you want to know where I actually have Inside Capture One, which is my raw editor. I actually use some starting points of noir. And yeah, you got to see that one, man. It's a classic.
That's wild.
But let's move on to one of your favorites that you love.
So, kind of moving away from the framing aspect. There's so much technical stuff that transfers from cinema to photography that it's hard to isolate them. But one movie that I grew up on that I continue to watch maybe once or twice a year is Guy Ritchie's Snatch. And I kind of want to preface this film. It's an absolute masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece. I love it. I love Guy Ritchie and I love Snatch. I think that is one. You like dogs?
Yeah. So he grades his films in an interesting way. He leans all the way to one color, so he won't split between like teal and orange or something like that. He'll kind of just go warmer, greener, bluer, redder, and that kind of thing. And so I want to talk about one specific scene here that inspired me to create. I'm going to talk about it first. To create kind of funny situations, like juxtaposing situations, and this is something that Guy Ritchie is known for. He's very theatrical. He's very over the top with how he does his films and how he builds his characters and his archetypes. So, if you will, we've got a killer on a couch, and he's sitting between two women, like twins, identical twins in this movie. And this specific shot right here it's absolutely useless. Like its only function is just comedic relief. And there aren't a lot of shots like this in his films, but Guy Ritchie sneaks them in. And this frame in and of itself, I think, is absolutely fantastic. And then moving on from this frame, you start getting into like the more technical aspects of the film. Obviously the grading is fantastic. It's like Kodachrome. But I love these tight shots. I love the way he introduces new parts of the film, and it's just gorgeous. But
yours says replica. Mine says Desert Eagle .50.
Mincy faggot balls.
Yes, that was an awesome movie, man. I love. Oh, right there. That's the scene.
That's okay. This is what I wanted to talk about framing wise, is because that's how you use a wide angle.
Yes,
like that is fantastic. I love Guy Ritchie's wide angle shots. There you go. You got the face coming in. It's dynamic. You got a quick focus rack from that one guy's face to this dude's face. Focus rack again.
Really great cinematography.
Yeah,
there.
You're just bouncing from all corners of the frame based on what the actors are doing. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's that kind of fun, it's that kind of playfulness that inspires me to shoot and create narratives in my work.
Absolutely. Well, Guy Ritchie, I think awesome work, and of course we're saying the directors, but the cinematographers are the ones who actually are the heroes here.
Yeah.
So. Let's talk about. Let me find it because I want to give credit. I want to give credit to the name.
Tim Maurice Jones did the cinematography for Snatch, and I also want to shout out one of my favorite cinematographers, Sven Nykvist. He did a lot of work with Ingmar Bergman and Tarkovsky, and he's just one of the heaviest hitting cinematographers of the 60s and 70s, in my personal opinion.
Well, I think for the next one, we're going to have to praise someone from Italy, Vittorio Storaro. I think Apocalypse Now is one of the most insane movies I've ever seen. Also shot anamorphic.
I almost threw that on my list.
One of the things that stood out to me the most about this film is when I saw it, like I saw it in the 90s because that's when I grew. I'm an 80s baby and I saw it in the 90s. It obviously came out in the 70s. And one of the things that's crazy about it is the film is so crisp and so amazingly shot. You could have told me it was shot in the 90s. Like, it is such a modern looking film for its time. And the color grading is insane. The anamorphic shots are insane. The fact that they went up in that helicopter, the color science, when they're surfing on the beach and they pop the smoke, they had the yellow and the purple together. Like, here's the scene right here. Everything is beautiful. And look at that dynamic range with the napalm going off. I mean, there's no clipped highlights. I mean, everything. I don't know what kind of filters they were using on this, but they absolutely...
They changed the aperture live for that shot.
Yeah, it was... They did an insane... And look at... I mean, just everything on here. I will tell you that one of the cool things about his shooting style is he likes to use one harsh light source. I think the scene where Marlon Brando is just... here.
Yeah.
Like the stuff where they have like a spotlight moving around.
Yeah.
It creates so much havoc in the scenes. But going back to the Marlon Brando scene, which it'll come up here in a minute, and I'll bring it up. But the Marlon Brando scenes, the singular light on Marlon Brando makes him 10,000 times more scary than any of his acting. So this whole, like, just this kind of stuff, this is what I'm talking about, where you see one light hitting, you see a little bit of a rim, you can see the facial structures, just absolutely insane. But the Marlon Brando scene, I'm just gonna find it real quick because I keep talking about it and it hasn't come up yet. But the Marlon Brando scene right there, I believe, yes. Like, here's another example of it. As Martin Sheen is coming up on everything and he's covered in the mud, and look, you can see those nice ovals, the ovals of the anamorphic lenses, and you see flares going off. I mean, just, dude, like, this is like absolutely insanity.
Juxtaposing surfboards with a war zone.
Well, there's good reason behind that, because what it was one of the reasons why this is such a great story is the guys in the movie were not fighting to win the war. They were fighting because they wanted to feel what it felt like to be home. And what did they do at home? They surfed. Why did they have the R&R in the redo version with the Playboy bunnies that come out? Because they wanted the R&R that felt like home. And so they were able to do that. And that's one of the reasons why Francis Ford Coppola is such a great storyteller. I don't have time to get into The Godfather, but I mean, come on. This scene right here with the smoke coming off is one of the most iconic scenes in the history of cinema. When you get into the scene with Marlon Brando, this is the scene I was talking about. This whole scene is insane, where you just see his bald head. Of course, he was really, really fat at this point, so you just wanted to do the head. But no, Apocalypse Now, once again, shot anamorphic. It's a recurring theme that we are going to talk about today. And just, I mean, come on, man. The freaking color, the freaking light, moving in and out of shadows. This is something that inspires me to pick up a camera. And if you go look at my work and you see some of my hard light work, it is absolutely stolen from Storino.
Yeah.
Vittorio. Oh, gosh, that guy. Storaro. I'm sorry. Vittorio Storaro. One of the greatest cinematographers of all time. Props.
Yeah. I tell you what, it's, so Apocalypse Now is based off of the book Heart of Darkness. I don't know if you've ever read it. Exploring the savage nature in human beings, and as the movie begins in a very domestic environment, about as domestic as it gets, as a man, doing his creature comforts, and this is narrative based, obviously, and it devolves into the most savage it can get, which is a vast exploration of Heart of Darkness, and I just love I love how it progresses in that way.
Yes. And by the way, hopefully you should know by now is that there are a shitload of spoilers. So if you haven't seen a movie we're talking about, just skip if we go to it and it's something that's on your list. Because one of the scenes I'm going to talk about later today is going to be like the ending of a movie because it's the peak to it.
Yeah.
So So yes, Apocalypse Now. Just some honorable mentions I want to talk about while you're bringing up the next one. I think Paul Thomas Anderson. I think Boogie Nights is one of the most. I mean, obviously the subject matter is about pornography, but and the story is about. It's not really a story about pornography as much as it is a story about how everybody in that movie is kind of a loser, you know. But it's really good storytelling. I think some of the cinematography in Boogie Nights is amazing. Obviously, There Will Be Blood. I mean, come on, that is one of the greatest movies ever to come out. I'm a big fan of that. I'm just going to do shout outs while you bring something else up. Christopher Nolan, if we're talking about modern cinematography, Inception is insane. A lot of that was built sets. That was not CGI. Some of it was CGI, but some of it was built sets. And that's something that is important to note, is that a lot of the movies that you see, like Blade Runner 2049, a lot of the stuff you think is CGI is actually sets that were built, miniature sets that were built that they shot, and then they used lights on. Inception has that. A lot of the stuff is real, like Interstellar had some sets. Dunkirk, as we're talking about Christopher Nolan, some of the best war scenes ever. Quentin Tarantino actually said the scene where the guy, like the explosions coming toward him and his head's down, is one of the greatest scenes, if not the greatest war scene ever filmed. So, but the composition, like drawing your eye toward that explosion about to hit the main character, is just incredible cinematography.
I haven't seen Dunkirk, but that sounds fantastic.
Oh my God, Dunkirk is like, it's really intense. Like, you got to go see that one for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, moving toward movies that have inspired me recently, I've kind of gone through what has kind of like ignited the love for framing and everything. Wong Kar-wai's Fallen Angels. Now, a lot of the stuff we also talked about is very narrative dependent, based on the actor, based on the lighting, based on the framing. And here I want to toss all that to the wayside, and I want to talk about mood building. Why? Because Fallen Angels was shot entirely on what they believe to be a 6mm lens by cinematographer Danny Boyle in Hong Kong. And this whole film is it's like a dream sequence of a mood in the lower crime quarters of Hong Kong's 90s era. And so if we move on over here, this is Fallen Angels. It's shot entirely on a wide angle lens, as you can see, heavily into the pro mist filters. And the entire sequence of the film is shot on what seems to be incredibly low budget. It's mostly handy cams. The shakiness is absolutely wild. And the imperfection of it is its own charm. It tells the story, not technically, but with motion, with constant motion and constant light.
Holy chromatic aberration, Batman. The highlights are just like, yeah.
It is fantastic. I went and saw this at Alamo Drafthouse on the big screen, and it blew my mind. And it's so low budget that there's some scenes in here where they did slow-mo, and I don't know if this was a stylistic choice or a budget choice, but they didn't have the lighting, and they didn't have the speed of film to actually capture a slow motion sequence at night. So what they did is they had to change the shutter speed, cut it in half, and capture like half frames, so 12 frames a second. And it's just phenomenal that's a stylistic choice. And as you can see, the colors are insane. The grading is it's just incredibly rich. It might be playing over again. And also,
how does this inspire your work, though?
It inspires my work by creating a mood that's not incredibly perfect. I'm a very technical guy. I'm a very technical shooter usually, but this use of greens and blues is, at first for my own work, very jarring, but it's something that I'd like to get used to. So like, I like how Wong Kar-wai uses the entire frame to just, it's like a microscopic view of filth, of the human experience. This guy's bloodied, smoking a cigarette. It's very personal. It's very interpersonal. You're right there into their thoughts. You're in the room with them, and the camera is quite literally pressed up against their face. So it just gives this sense of unavoidable humanity. You can't escape it. You can't have distance from the human experience. It's just so raw and real, and I find that incredibly appealing in my own work.
That looks awesome. I have not seen it yet. A movie that's entirely shot in a wide angle, that sounds super appealing to me. I want to check that out.
You should.
Yes,
yeah.
That's awesome. what I love this kind of stays on a theme I'm about to talk about, which is imperfections. So sometimes you can use a lens as imperfection to help elevate something. And I would argue that probably my top 5 movie for sure of the 1990s does this at its peak, and that is Michael Mann's classic Heat. Heat is absolutely insane. I love that movie. Not just. I mean, the cinematography is good, but the attention to detail. There's a scene in there where they rob a bank and they leave the bank, and the attention to detail for how they cover fire, retreat cover fire, is so by the book that the United States military actually makes their new recruits watch that movie to say this is how you retreat with fire. This is how you get out of an ambush. This is yeah, and because he hired like a special forces guy to do that, and but to my point of the imperfections. So we've been talking about anamorphic lenses, and one of the imperfections of anamorphic lenses is they have an insane amount of chromatic aberration, an insane amount of lens flaring. If you've ever seen a J.J. Abrams movie and you see that blue line come across your screen, that's usually a dead giveaway that they're using an anamorphic lens. The other dead giveaway is that on the outside of the frame, instead of the bouquet balls being circular, they're oval shaped. And so you can see in this final scene, which is this is a spoiler alert, you see Al Pacino. You see that oval right there? There it is. And this scene is just so brilliant because they're using the airport landing lights right here. Watch this. You see right here as he rounds the corner. Look at all this like insane imperfection and chromatic aberration. Look at how soft De Niro is in this scene. That is like peak anamorphic lens. Boom. And just you see like the imperfections of this anamorphic lens, the chromatic aberrations and everything from those airport landing lights, that softness, this kind of bluish hue in the whites. That is like peak anamorphic characteristics. And like that whole scene, like you also hear Moby, God moving over the face of the waters playing in the background. Like that whole scene is just the cinematographer, the coordination between Michael Mann, the cinematography, the audio. It is all like, it all leads up to this this chaos, this peak of the movie. And they used, like I said, one of the imperfections of an anamorphic lens to add to elevate that scene, because like I said, those blown out highlights and all that chromatic aberration, I think like makes Heat visually happen. And it's just like, here it is. It's all coming to a head and it's all exploding at this one point in time where the climax of the movie happens. And so Heat is like, there's so many other reasons why that movie is so amazing, but I just wanted to highlight that one scene because that scene right there is one of the biggest reasons why I love to shoot with anamorphic lenses sometimes. I just love it. And I have a project I'm working on right now. I've been watching so much anamorphic stuff lately. I actually think I'm just going to shoot the whole thing in anamorphic, and it's that a project I'm doing with the diving helmet.
Yes.
I want to shoot it in a wide format, and so I think I'm going to probably shoot it anamorphic.
Dude, that'd be amazing. I don't know very much about anamorphic lenses, so if you see me like not like paying attention to the camera, I'm just very much like, okay, like because I haven't seen Heat.
Oh my God, you got to see Heat. Oh God, that is required. Like if you're a cinema buff and you want to like just drool at cinematography for 3 hours, go watch Heat. Oh my God. It is so fucking good.
I know. I almost watched it last night. I watched Prisoners with Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman is dead.
As of right now, in the recording date of this pod,
it's on Netflix.
Heat is on Netflix. It's also for free on YouTube right now with ads. So if you're watching this and you don't have your parents' password for Netflix because they're cracking down on that shit, you can watch Heat right now in HD with ads. So just throwing that out there, it's free.
I love that. A movie that I stumbled upon recently that really inspired me is a Japanese film. It's called The Cure by Kiyoshi Kurosawa.
So it's not like The Cure, like Robert Smith going,
Dude, Robert Smith, I can't, like, dude's weird, man. So what I liked about this film is obviously the cinematography is great. I like that. But something that inspired me as a film photographer, as a film shooter, is you'll notice that it doesn't have that classic Vision 3T look to it. it's very blended in with the pinks and the greens, and the whites are very cool. Like it's a cooler film stock. Now, I don't know if this was or was not shot on Vision. That might make me sound like an idiot. That's all well and good. But the tones and the way that it's lit and the colors coming through, they scream Fuji to me. Look at that. It's such a soft, gentle blue and green almost everywhere, besides the obvious like yellows and browns and what people are wearing. Another thing I like about this is just the scenes and how they kind of fill the frames they're very, very interesting. Like obviously like the lighter there, and I mean, this is moving pretty quickly, but I just love the way, kind of like your Citizen Kane here is, how they just have the focus on one person, and there's stuff going on in the background. Now, there's a lot of information here, like in this scene, in how like, okay, you've got your protagonist, he's in focus right there, and in the background, even though he's out of focus, there's still a lot of information there. And it's funny is that the dynamic of the scene, the tension and the relationship of the scene is between those two subjects and the X on the wall. And so it's inspired me to kind of move more towards deliberately creating scenes and taking a lot more time to set up a narrative relationship between multiple subjects in frame, instead of shooting one person in frame and kind of like focusing on the light. I'm just gonna see if there's anything else here that's like kind of crazy. Again, like super interesting, very minimal. I love scenes like this where there's a little bit of action. You don't necessarily know what the subject is doing, but it's incredibly well lit. You've got almost kind of like a vignetting of the scene. The colors are incredibly balanced and cool. Not so much that it's like a statement like Guy Ritchie, but I don't know. I just like to soak this kind of thing in, these colors, the chair placed where it is. It's an intentionally balanced shot, and they made sure that the bed and the chair is in harmony, and the only chaos in this scene is from this one guy moving about the space, just creating absolute havoc when everything else is balanced, and I find that just tantalizing.
That's awesome. I'm going to do a shout out without video examples, just because I think I can talk about this and most people have seen these movies, but Martin Scorsese. I think Martin Scorsese is the king of the, take the Rolling Stones or take Devo or take some modern music instead of a film score and put a montage together of it that's storytelling. So like you think about in the movie Casino when Sam Ralstein's walking through the casino and you have all the music playing, or just, when he and Sharon Stone's character are having issues, like the ability to take beautiful cinematography and piece it together with like a really common song, whether it's a Fleetwood Mac or something like that. Scorsese absolutely is the master class in that. I think Tarantino borrows from that. He learned it from Scorsese. I'm probably putting words in his mouth, but I'm probably also not wrong. Absolutely love that about Scorsese. And remember, this episode is about what inspires us to pick up a camera. And even though the cinematography is obviously fantastic in all of his movies, usually it's the sound that goes with it. The marriage of music to visuals, that inspires me to go pick up my camera, because I'm a musician and that's my background. And I love the fact that Scorsese is so good at doing that. And he's such a great storyteller. He does such a great job of developing characters. But I wanted to give Scorsese a bit of a shout out before I go into my next one, which this one may take a while, and I am unapologetic about it. And that is Quentin Tarantino. He is, you can say he's an asshole, you can say you don't like the guy, but you cannot deny the fact that his movies, to me, he's like the DJ Shadow of directors, because he can take, he borrows, he absolutely borrows, and he's unapologetic about it. He will borrow things from other movies and bring them into his. He'll take a spaghetti western and he'll marry it to kung fu and samurai culture, like he did in Kill Bill, which to me, I think, first and foremost, let's talk about Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction, when I saw it in the theater, I was like, holy shit, you can do this with a movie? Like, you can just take it and tell it and, take it and put it out of order. And then Tarantino kind of builds an entire world around it. And he's a video store nerd. That's why I say he's like DJ Shadow, because Quentin, if you're not familiar with DJ Shadow pushed the limits of sampling in the mid to late 1990s. Like he took other people's songs and made songs out of it. Like he would sample pitch, and it's one thing to beat match, but if you can take pitch and get harmonies to work well together of other people's songs, he did that, and that's what he revolutionized. And Tarantino's sort of there's this thing I like in this, Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. I'm going to pull it in. Obviously you see like the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like clearly, like he is clearly influenced. Yeah. And by the way, if you don't like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's because you watch Transformers and all those other movies, and that's the peak of like how much you like cinema. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's why you don't like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. If you don't understand that movie was a love letter not only to the 1960s, the summer of 1969, but to old Hollywood and the unrecognized people in Hollywood that made Hollywood happen, it's really easy to follow that movie.
Love that film.
Yeah, that film was so good. I saw that film in 70 millimeter. I think it was in 70 millimeter. I know it was in a film of stock of some kind at Alamo. And I just sat there and was just like, dude, like this is amazing. And the character development. So like, I love Quentin Tarantino for the fact that I can use his style to tell stories and develop characters, because when I'm doing stills photography, I want to be a storyteller. I want the viewer to look at my shot and know everything that's going on. There's like depths and layer. And so, I hear people accuse like his movies of, well, they talk for too long. It's like, well, no, you don't understand. When Jules and Vincent are talking about a foot massage for 10 minutes, that has relevance later on in the movie when Vincent takes Mia Wallace to Jackrabbit Slim's, and then she accidentally snorts his heroin and dies because they were talking about the guy getting thrown off for a foot massage. Well, now she's just OD'd on drugs, and Vincent Vega's like, oh shit, here I am. Like, just all that stuff, it leads up into something greater. And so, maybe you don't like it, that's fine, but there's absolute relevance to it. And that's one of the things that I love about Quentin Tarantino is the complexity that he builds his characters up. And he also
He's incredibly reliable too.
He's reliable, but another thing that, because he gets a lot of flack for his characters using the N-word, and he gets a lot of flack for he got a lot of flack for Jennifer Jason Leigh getting the shit beaten out of her in The Hateful Eight. And it's like, he's not writing in good people into his movies. He's writing in bad people. Bad people do bad things. And so that's why they were doing that. That's why he beat the shit out of Jennifer Jason Leigh, because he's a bad person. And Quentin Tarantino writes that in. But I also love the fact that he doesn't care about revisionist history. It's like, I'm just going to kill Hitler. I'm just going to kill Charles Manson. Like, whatever.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact he's like, you don't sit there and fantasize about alternate endings. You could sit there and you could take a picture or do a short film about an alternate ending to something that happened in history. He just says, I'm going to do it. I think that's amazing. I think that's awesome. And, I understand it. I get what he's going for there, and I think it's great. I think it's awesome. And like I said, when people like piss on Quentin Tarantino, it's like, why are you pissing on Quentin Tarantino? Like there are things that like, oh, well, that's not realistic. Yeah, Beatrix Kiddo's taking a fucking samurai sword onto an airplane and flying with a samurai sword. No, you can't do that. But she does it in the movie, and it makes it way cooler.
It's I love how Quentin Tarantino, he didn't let go of his childhood, and he never, I don't think for one time did he ever inform, or he never let the society or the world around him, besides what he enjoyed, inform him on how he should make movies. I think a lot of directors have allowed that to happen, and they've just are honestly shit these days. Guy Ritchie's movies suck. David Fincher's latest Killer sucked. Napoleon, absolute garbage.
Was Napoleon bad?
Napoleon was absolute like hot steaming shit. I mean, if you're watching a movie for the cinematography alone and just how people are lit, fair enough. But like The Joker, absolute dog shit. Like not cinema.
You're talking about the one with
Joaquin.
Joaquin, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, terrible. A lot of directors are just making terrible movies. Oppenheimer, absolutely just so boring, like glorified documentary, absolutely terrible.
I thought Oppenheimer looked great. I thought the cinematography was great, but I do think some of it, and I know I'm going to get flack for that. We're going to get a bunch of downvotes here. I thought Oppenheimer was good. I think what it boils down to is that not as many great stories are being written these days. And so Oppenheimer is good compared to what else is out there right now. Like that's coming out in the big cinema, because they're spending so much money on comic book movies, That's what they're allocating their budgets for, and there's not good movies.
If you had the sound off and you decided to cut the movie in half and take out a whole like one genre of what the movie was, whether it be the politics, whether it be the love life or something, it would be a good movie. But the fact of the matter is like these like big name directors, they're getting so like they're losing the art of cinema. There's no narrative in Oppenheimer anymore. There wasn't any narrative in Napoleon. It was just, we're going to take a sequence of events that were all included in this person's life. There's going to be almost no tension, and you're not even like, they don't actually develop the character. It's terrible. Like when I watched Napoleon and I watched Oppenheimer, they could have killed Napoleon and Oppenheimer in the first 10 minutes, in the first hour, and I wouldn't have cared because they don't develop it. Whereas like you take Ridley Scott's Ridley Scott's earlier work. Ridley Scott did Napoleon, right?
That was yes, it was Ridley Scott.
Yeah, so you take Ridley Scott's earlier work like Gladiator, and part of narrative is your selection to omit. In Gladiator, a lot was omitted to create a form of narrative. What was included? Very small bits of his family being murdered. What was the use of his family being murdered? To illustrate the character of who Maximus was. You had one battle scene. Why? To illustrate who he was as a leader and how his men respected him, how he handled leading. But why? Because the rest of the movie he wasn't leading. You know? And so a lot was omitted and only specific things were kept in there to define this person who you root for almost right off the bat.
But why does it inspire you to pick up a camera?
But Napoleon?
No. Gladiator.
Gladiator inspires me to pick up a camera because, well, it doesn't necessarily. It inspires me to pick up a video camera.
Fair enough. But you're acknowledging that was better work than his more recent work.
Well, nothing is omitted in all these like big like biopics that we're doing these days, except unless you're talking about my next favorite biopic movie, which is The Darkest Hour about Winston Churchill. All right, let's put this guy on. So what really inspires me about this film is the way it's lit. I love these detail shots. I love the incredibly soft lighting. Everything is soft and everything is deliberate. They omit a lot and they include a lot of fast-paced scenes that depict very quick movements, very rapid things. There's no wasted space, and it's not, the director isn't jerking himself off with oh, I'm going to hold this scene because it's artistic, or I'm going to hold this incredible silence because it's artistic. No, it's a very robust film, and a lot of the shots are deliberate, and that's the way I like to shoot. It's very easy as a photographer to fill a series of shots with dead space, with a dead photo that doesn't exactly tie relevance to anything else. And so I'd have to say that for this movie, the lighting is absolutely A1 spectacular. You go from multiple shots of low dynamic range to high dynamic range, and it's interwoven really well. And I just really enjoy how incredible the soft lighting is. Like right here, that ambience, that world building, the fall off of all the faces to the left, while maintaining the peak lighting on the top crest of Churchill's hair there. It is absolutely fantastic. And I love the grade. The grade is as important as the film itself in this, and why. It won't necessarily be demonstrated in this clip, but the entirety of the film is graded in red, white, and blue. Why? Because it's a British film illustrating one of the greatest examples of British leadership in 100 years. Now, I'm going to catch flack for that because a lot of people hate Churchill because they're like, oh, he's a colonist, he's a drunk, he's an opioid user. But
all true,
all true. But I mean, I'll fight back on that. I'm going to get absolutely shysted for this. Like, I don't know a single person who wasn't a colonist when back in those days. We were just leaving the 19th century when empires were still just about there.
Well, real quick on the side tangent, we live in a world where you were either perfect or you were 100% bad. You can't take some good things that people had plus their flaws.
Yeah.
You're either all or nothing, which is an unrealistic way to go about the world. But go ahead, back to your Churchill.
But yeah, back to my Churchill. This is graded in red, white, and blue. Obviously the British flag colors, and it's absolutely fantastic. Napoleon was graded the same way. Is graded in red, white, and blue, which is really interesting when it came to all the diplomatic things. And it was actually lit, same as how this is lit. They're lit to be like paintings. Why? Because there's a lot of in the 17th and 18th century, a lot of the commissioned paintings were of parliamentary figures at their time. So Napoleon, the movie, is actually lit and graded to have extremely flat faces with extremely soft light, and it's all red, white, and blue, kind of similar to how these parliamentary shots are in Churchill, and it's meant to look like paintings. And so I find that incredible. So oftentimes when I'm doing my grading, this has inspired me to not only have a definitive grade, not just one that looks pretty, but also one that enhances the narrative of what I'm doing as well.
Nice. Quick funny story about Churchill. So Orson Welles was on vacation somewhere in Europe with his wife, and Churchill happened to be there at the same time, and Orson Welles was trying to get funding for a movie, and he had some Russian oligarch person there with him, and he walked by Churchill, and Churchill knew who Orson Welles was, and he gave him a head nod. This was like right after Churchill lost his re-election bid, right after World War II.
Yeah.
Not his best days. And the Russian guy was just beside himself, like, oh my God, like, Winston Churchill knows you? He's like, yeah. He's like, all right, I'll fund your movie. And so like later on that day, he's chilling out with Winston Churchill. They're like whatever on the beach, whatever. And he's like, hey, I want to say thank you because you gave me that head nod and that actually got funding for my next film. And so he's with the Russian oligarch like the next day, and he walks by Winston Churchill, and Winston Churchill sees him and gives him a big bow, like just bows like that. And then, and of course Orson Welles is laughing because Churchill is like buttering him up and making him look good. I just thought that was a funny story. He definitely got funded for that film. But do you have any other films you want to talk about before I get to my final?
No, get to your final, and I'll pull up my last one.
I'm going to talk about my favorite film of all time. And I've gone through some. Well, yeah, I did the Heat one already. So yeah, we're good. I'm gonna go through my favorite film of all time. There's not a word spoken in it. This film was the very first film ever converted to 8K. It was shot in 70 millimeter in 1992. They took 150,000 frames of 70 millimeter. I guess technically it was 65 millimeter film, and they scanned it one at a time. They restored it, and they have it. It was, like I said, the very first thing ever put into 8K, and that was the 1992 masterpiece Baraka. And if you've never seen Baraka, you need to see Baraka because it is, in my opinion, the most beautifully shot film in the history of cinema, and that is a bold claim. And I will fight anybody to the death on it. But this is the most humbling movie in the entire world, in my opinion. I majored in college in geography, so they make you study the Earth. They make you study human beings' interaction with the Earth. And this movie is the quintessential capturing of that. And the score in this is absolutely spectacular. The color grading in this is absolutely spectacular. And the scenes are just insane. The darkest parts of humanity, the lightest parts of humanity are all captured in this movie. If you want like oil fields burning and the boneyard out near Tucson with all the old airplanes in it, you go to Kuwait, it takes you everywhere. They take you to Auschwitz. They take you to the killing fields of the Khmer Rouge. They take you to it was shot in 24 countries, 6 continents. They take you to India. They show bodies burning. They show people bathing in the rivers. They show beautiful time lapses. This is, in my opinion, the greatest movie ever made. In my opinion, as far as just sitting down and watching it. If you ever want to just recalibrate in life, you're going through some tough times and you just want to have some humble pie and, see how you fit in the world. I recommend no other film greater than Barack. I almost said Barack Obama. Baraka. That's the name of the film, Baraka. And Baraka is actually a word that they use in Islam. It means blah, 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 blessing, essence, or breath. Robert Ebert, he said about this that if man sends another Voyager into the distant stars and it can carry only one film on board, that film might be Baraka. It is basically like, this is our Earth. This is how the humans live on the Earth. Here are the animals. Here are the beautiful parts of the world. Here are the bad parts of the world. This is just an objective view of humanity, humanity's interaction with Mother Earth. And if you haven't seen Baraka, I actually find there are some streams of it on YouTube. And as much as I butter this movie up and say it's the greatest movie of all time, they actually made a follow-up to this movie in 2011 that I haven't seen. It's called Samsara. So I'm going to go see Samsara and get back to you all on that. And you're going to go see Heat, and you're going to get back to me on that because you have no fucking choice. Now, we're going to wrap up with Brandon's favorite last movie, and then we're going to call it a day. Go ahead, Brandon.
Well, my favorite last movie is one that I was introduced to in college. It came out in 1929, and it was by a prominent socialist named Dziga Vertov. It's called Man with a Movie Camera. It's Человек с киноаппаратом. And so this came out as an antithesis to the idea of montage. Eisenstein really revolutionized and pioneered montage, the use of using two separate clips to synthesize a third idea that is not of those clips. So one example would be first clip is you see a man looking out the window. Second clip would be a child playing out in the street, and you would assume that man is looking at the child, even though there's no logical reason that should be the case. And antithetically, Dziga Vertov wanted to show the world for what it really was with a camera. And so he fought this idea of montage, and he put together this movie called Man with a Movie Camera. And he wanted to show the everyday life of the world around him. And he did so using montage. It's not one ongoing clip, so it's inescapable. And so I thought it was very interesting. And so here we go. This is Man with a Movie Camera, and as you can see, that's them shooting right there. They're on a car, and they're just capturing the everyday life. It is the antithesis of world building, and yet by virtue of it being montage unavoidably, by virtue of it being an actual movie, it is world building in and of itself because they're still depicting a non-realistic view of the world. Now, what's also really interesting about this is back then, the socialist idea was to elevate man by technical processes. It was the materialist idea of tabula rasa, where your environment shapes who you are. And so, given that mindset, a lot of artists at this time were incredibly. They liked to take images of mechanization, of processes. They didn't like to isolate single people. They didn't like to glorify the individual. It was all about the masses. It was all about the giant machine that was the USSR at the time. And that's what they were trying to depict. Not necessarily for the sake of propaganda, but to depict life as it really was in an objective view, sort of to define a truth of the greater system at hand. And so he put this together, wanted to depict reality. See, as you can see here, he's basically just depicting what the real life was. Everything super anonymous, very, very metaphorically motivated in terms of motifs, adolescence, adulthood, struggle, happiness here. There are no characters, there are no protagonists, there are no antagonists. There is only cinema, reality, the world around us, and the processes, the mechanizations in which all of it cohabitates. And so that's why in the middle of this movie there's a spinning machine. That's actually Dziga Vertov's wife cutting the film that we're seeing now, ironically. And that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to illustrate just ongoing process. He didn't want even the behind the scenes to be left out of this film because he hated the idea of montage synthesis. He couldn't stand the idea of creativity. Like I said, he's a staunch socialist. He wanted reality to be cold, hard, materialist reality, and he wanted to elucidate that in his cinema.
So is this, would you say that this film has had a profound impact on like how you shoot street or how you shoot environmental portraiture? In what ways does this film impact you as a photographer?
It impacts me because it is antithetical to how I operate as a person, and so it kind of pushes me to go beyond the bounds. I think a human being's personal experience elucidated in through the narrative form of photography is very crucial, and this forces me to take take a step back and go, an objective view with no strict subject can also be important.
It just said that Heat was the next upcoming movie on there. Is it listening to you?
Yeah, it is.
It is. You didn't select it, right?
I didn't select it.
Okay, so the YouTube algorithms are going crazy. They are definitely listening because we talked about Heat, and he had one of his examples up, and it said, "Next up, Heat." So I think that is an omen, a good omen, right?
I think I have to watch it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you need to watch Heat, and if you're watching this and you haven't seen the movie Heat, you should go check it out as well. And now we're going to wrap up today's episode. Yes, that does it for today's episode. We thank each and every one of you for listening, for watching. You can check us out at f11pod.com. You can check us out with the handle F11pod on Facebook and Instagram. Obviously, there was a lot to go over today. We're still fine-tuning the video side of things, but I think that this was going to be an awesome episode. I think we did really well today. Hopefully, you learned a little bit about what influences us as photographers/videographers. And until next time, chase light and not algorithms.
Thank you for listening to today's episode.
For more information about this podcast, go to www.f11pod.com.